bring added value to clients. I'm just thinking about it perhaps in broader terms, because you did very briefly mention the idea of, having very high possibilities of exposing yourself, or very high risks when you work with a firm that is not perhaps ideal. Would you perhaps be able to think of just one or two of these main risks of, collaborating with the wrong person in Kenya, or indeed anywhere else, but we're just talking about us in particular? To me, what comes to mind, and I go first, is when we have clients reaching out to us, they think about trying to spend less money, trying to, shop around. They do a bit of tire kicking. What they don't usually understand is what you said very well before, the idea of a supermarket. You're not a shop where you can get Coca-Cola and then something cola and another cola, and they're all more or less the same. Yes, of course, the flavor is different, but it's not going to kill you, right? Whereas here, choosing the wrong partner can, again, as you said, have very strong implications in your life, in the outcomes that you have. Sometimes price, I think, is key when people try and make a choice, which is understandable. Risks attached to that in Italy is that if perhaps you choose a lawyer that is given to you by the state, by the court, or indeed a lawyer that doesn't reflect appropriate pricing in their services, that is reflected in what you do. If you're not paid for something you do it, either you put it at the end of the list or you don't do it at all. And that's unfortunately the way that, many of these so-called strong advocates work. They work on quantity, they get the first fee, and then they forget about it. There's no proper tracing of the courts. There's no proper tracing of what goes on. They don't communicate properly with their partners or with the client. Do you have any others in mind?
Yeah, of course, there is a lot of there is a big danger. There's a big danger, and I have seen. For me, if I can use this example, is and I will start from where I said our services are extremely personal services.
Yeah.
They are personal services because they touch into the smallest details and nitty-gritties of a person's life.
Yeah.
You're assisting clients purchase property, that is extremely personal. You're assisting clients in personal relationship matters like divorce, children maintenance matters. Those are intimate details of their lives. You're assisting clients in a criminal procedure related matters, for instance, criminal trials and regulatory matters. Those are extremely personal and touch on their freedom.
Sure.
So that there has to be a very personal relationship between a very good professional relationship between the advocate and the client to be able to service them properly. This includes things like advocates confidentiality, proper billing, communication, updates, and the client has to. The relationship has to be in such a way that the advocate is not using their position to take advantage of the client, either personally or financially. That's very important. And when that person goes to a quack or an advocate who is not really pledging loyalty to those aspects of that relationship, the client suffers two dangers. One, let's say and this is very prominent, and this is a problem that occurs often, is an advocate, when an advocate, let's say, does not put in the amount of work that is needed, let's say in land transactions, there is a danger that those transactions will end up being an annuity, and the client loses both their money and their land and their time.
Yes, absolutely.
Then in other scenarios, an advocate the client will suffer the danger of losing their freedom, and that freedom can be lost by simply someone failing to pay attention to the small details, communicating a date, communicating regulatory compliance that are needed, and that person loses their freedom. And there is nothing which is as hard as losing your freedom in a
Absolutely.
foreign country. Is
Absolutely.
extremely difficult. Is extremely difficult. And I have seen in most scenarios, someone will come to the country, goes to the cheapest person, the next cheapest person they will get, and there is miscommunication in terms. We must understand there is also language barriers. So they will not be able to be explained in a way that they understand what is required from them. And because of that breakdown of communication, someone ends up either losing money or losing their freedom.
Absolutely.
And that is a big danger. So they end up having a very unpleasant stay or investment in a country where, if they could have paid attention and gotten good legal counsel, their stay and their investment could have flourished.
Sure, and I think unpleasant is a very good. You use a very democratic word, very diplomatic word of expressing yourself. I think it is the least that we can say. I completely agree. And we have both worked in cases in which we have seen glaring mistakes, in which, by not paying attention to details, perhaps failing to notify, failing to notice something in a report in X days, that results in sentences that are of the heaviest possible nature. And this is what comes to mind to me in the first place, having the time, the proper skills, and the attention to look at the documentation before you engage in any dealings with the counterparty, with the authorities. That is key, as you have very well said. So perhaps what I'm thinking is that we can summarize this information and thinking about three main rules that people can follow when it comes to finding the right counsel for these matters. The first one that comes to mind is do your research. Don't just base your research on your counsel based on pricing. There are many other factors. Everyone has their own budget, of course, but do your research. See what that law firm has done, who they work with, where they have worked, etc. References. Number two, ask for references. Ask around. Take maybe some more time. Call around. See if you know people. See, have you heard of this law firm? What do they do? Are they good? Blah 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 blah. And the last that comes to mind to me at this moment is, of course, find someone that is able to take the time properly to give you counsel before you engage in a relationship. So, for example, what we do, and we do it all the time, is say, okay, well, listen, this is your issue. If you tell me what happened to you over the phone, I can't give you proper advice. It's not like you go to the doctor and say, doctor, I have a headache. Can you cure me? You may have a number of ailments. Without looking at the documents, without looking at the blood work, the x-rays, I can't tell you what you have. This is the same. So maybe spend a small, very discreet amount of money, have an initial consultation with the lawyer that will take the time to look through what you're doing, look through the paperwork, and then you will have your proper counsel. I think these are perhaps the main things that we can come up with. Is there anything else that might come to mind to you when it comes to these rules, let's say?
Yeah, for me, for purposes of both for purposes of our respective for our respective jurisdictions, is also in terms of advising them not to reinvent the wheel. For instance, if for my clients here in Kenya, I would advise don't reinvent the wheel, and this is the reason I say that. If you instruct us for purposes of legal needs in Italy, the Kenyan law firm has a relationship with that client in Kenya, and the Kenyan law firm will be able to do better due diligence, and in terms of when they are instructing a law firm in Italy, Bertaggia, for instance, And then that client will have a bigger and larger accountability mechanism, because they will be able to hold us who are in Kenya to account because
Very
of something
important.
called
Very
proximity.
important.
There is proximity for purposes of accountability. And the same applies to clients in, let's say, Italy or Hong Kong. They don't need to come and start reinventing the wheel in terms of shopping. They will
Exactly.
come here to a foreign jurisdiction, then they will get someone who they don't have a relationship with and who they do not have proximity in terms of holding them accountable. They
Exactly.
don't need to reinvent the wheel. They let them instruct you because you're proximate to them, and they will find it easier in terms of holding you to account. So clients
Absolutely.
should not reinvent the wheel. Let them issue those instructions to the firm that is the most proximate to them. And from there, we will be able to serve them seamlessly. There is no need to break that seamless way of doing things. So in short, they will get legal services in Kenya next door to them in Italy, in Ferrara.
Absolutely. And this is why I like talking to you, because you have these pearls of wisdom and you happen to close beautifully every chat that we have. This is, again, seamless. That's a very good word, seamless, and of the highest value. Let me thank you very much for your time. It's always very, very precious. I know how busy you are, and you make the time to spend a few minutes with us to tell us about, give us tips about how we may be able to work better, serve our clients better in Kenya, in Africa in general. So thank you very much again. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you, Alex.
Always a pleasure. We're looking forward to seamless services this year.
Absolutely. Have a lovely rest of the day and good work.
You as well.